Three Musketeers may be dead, but the single Musketeer is stronger than ever, and she is finding her way into a bunch of different decks, from Golem to bridge spam to cycle decks being even stronger. She's just great. So tonight we're going to be taking a look at YugiArt's Musketeer Elixir Pump bridge spam style deck. What's cracking, everybody? You're back with Mr. Berger, and as I mentioned, we're going to be taking a look at this Musketeer bridge spam Elixir Pump kind of deck. Now, Musketeer, man, it's been all over the place since that buff, and I don't know, I never really like decks that involve the pump, and I didn't really like Three Musketeers as an archetype in general, but I am a big fan of the solo Musketeer, and her getting that buff has made her really viewable in a lot of different decks. So I actually found this deck on Twitter a week or so ago, almost like immediately after the balance changes hit, and as I mentioned, it was founded by YugiArt. I think it's like at Yugi_art or at Yugis_art on Twitter. He's a great Grand Challenge winner. Basically, he wins a bunch of Grand Challenges back to back. He was also just on Clash with Ash, and if I'm not mistaken, they covered this very deck. So I saw it on that channel, and I was like, alright, I've seen it on Twitter, I've seen it on Ash's channel, I gotta try this deck out, and I gotta cover it myself. Now, when I first saw it, I was having some trouble with it, but I kind of got into the flow of it a little bit, and I'm feeling a lot better, a lot more comfortable with it now. So let's talk about this deck. It's relatively high skill cap, so do keep that in mind. It's because it's a cycle deck, it's pretty fast and everything. There's a lot of room for you to get better, but there's also a bigger learning curve. If you're comfortable with like fireball bait decks though, or mid-range to heavy range spell bait decks, then this is a great deck for you because there's a huge element of spell bait. It's not the same as like a log bait or a zap bait deck, so it's not a light spell bait deck. It's more of a medium or heavy spell bait deck. But that really is like, if you were to define this as like an archetype, it would be, first of all, be bridge spam because you have the Bandit and the battle ram, but it would also be like a spell bait archetype. The main reasons that I keep saying this is because you got three primary units or cards in your deck that can really benefit from your opponent using their spell, like their rocket or their poison or their fireball, on one of the others. So each of these is going to be generally an equal trade, so if they use it on one of the three, you can safely put down the other two. And that's kind of the theory behind Three Musketeers to begin with, right? Which is, where this deck kind of evolved from. So ideally, well, first of all, the three cards is Hunter, obviously, Musketeer, and Elixir Pump. So ideally, they're going to be using it on like your Hunter or your Musketeer. I know that like the Musketeer can survive with a sliver of health with a fireball on her if your opponent has fireballed her. So she's a great option for them to use their spell on. In your case, right? You want them to use their spell on your Musketeer. But you'll notice also that they may use it on the Elixir Pump or on the Hunter. And in this game particularly, he keeps rocketing my Elixir Pump, but I want to point something out. I keep putting it down, and I keep cycling back to it super fast, so that every time he rockets, it's already gained one Elixir. And given the positioning right on top of my King Tower there, since I didn't put it to the bottom right or the bottom left, he cannot get any other chip damage away on any of my towers other than my King Tower, and he doesn't want to activate that, obviously. That's a given. So he's basically continually, first of all, getting his rocket out of cycle, so he can't use it to finish off my tower or kill a big push. And he's also essentially losing Elixir each time, because you'll notice that I'm able to cycle back so quickly that every time he rockets it, I've already gained one Elixir. So that's basically one free Elixir for me. It costs me 6 to pump, it costs him 6 to rocket. If I get one Elixir from that, as I mentioned, it's the same as giving me one free Elixir. So I haven't even need to use that element of spell bait so much in this particular match, but you will see it in some other ones most likely, because he's continually using his spell on my one thing, on my pump. Early on, what you want to do is you want to try to get them to use that spell on, as I mentioned, your Musketeer or your Hunter, because then right after that you can put the pump down and try to get some value from it, rather than it getting placed and just immediately getting rocketed or fireballed or poisoned or whatever. So that is your huge element of spell bait in this deck. You got the Musketeer, you got the Hunter, and you got the Elixir Pump. And just to reiterate, ideally, you want them to use their spell on one of the two troops so that you can safely put that Elixir Pump down, gaining Elixir advantage, and then just go for a massive bridge spammy style push. Alright, next thing that I would like to talk about is the huge cycle potential. Well, I've already kind of covered this a little bit, but you can cycle back to like a Musketeer or a Hunter very quickly. You can also cycle back to Elixir Pumps very quickly, and you'll see this in other matches here in my replays. it's just, you know, you got the skeletons, you got the ice golem, you've got the barbarian barrel. Each of those only costs 1 or 2, and then you've also got the bandit, which costs only 3, and then you got the elixir pump for massive elixir gains. So there's definitely a very large element of cycle potential in this deck. Now I wanted to point out how you can, you know, get them to ace their spell on the hunter or musketeer, but I've already talked about that, so I just want to reiterate it because it's really important. That's a huge concept in this deck, so do keep that in mind when playing this deck. Don't just place your musketeer and hunter down willy-nilly. Try to take advantage of it. Think about, okay, they've used it, what else can I put down now safely? They've used their spell, what can I put down safely because of that? And then, you know, again, if they've already used their medium or heavy spell and you can cycle back to another musketeer or hunter or elixir pump because it's so fast, by all means do it. So here we're going up against a golem deck. Let's see how I play that out in this particular match. Now, I know I mentioned this already, but also, again, this is something that's worth breaking down a little bit more. Be really careful, and I fell victim of this once or twice, not to let them put the poison or fireball or whatever on your pump and your troops. Or like your pump and your tower if avoidable. Just don't clump up those spell bait units together. You don't want them fireballing both your hunter and your pump, because that's huge value for them, and that can really throw the game out of balance and cause you to eventually lose. So do be very careful about that. You know, just try to place them out separated. And like you'll notice here, since I'm pushing in the left and he's pushing the left, I'll often pump on the right, because then it's less likely for him to break through on the left and then just take out my pump easily, or he won't be as inclined to, you know, what would I say, like send in something to try to counter that pump. I mean, I know this guy doesn't have a miner, but just let's say that he did. If he was running a miner deck, he'd be less inclined to send in that miner to counter that pump on the side that's already, or he would be more inclined on the side that's weak, so then he would be less inclined on the side that has more HP left on it. So if you can put it safely on the opposite side of where the main fight's going on, or most of the battles are going on, or whichever tower is weaker, then by all means do that. So main point here, keep those units separated. You can clump things together later on when you've got like a bandit and a battle ram at the bridge, you know, because you're going bridge spammy, but that's usually the only time that would be an exception in this deck. For the ranged units, make sure to keep them separated, and the pump, obviously. Alright, I know that I have probably repeated myself on these things here a few times, but that's because they're real important, guys. You know, if I am saying something more than once, that just is a testament to the importance of it. Alright guys, so for opening moves, before we do opening moves, I just want to point out one other thing really quickly. This deck only has one spell in it, and your spell is a light spell. It is the Barbarian Barrel. Now the Barb Barrel has received buff after buff after buff, and then they reduced the elixir cost, and then all of a sudden it was super popular. So they nerfed it, and that makes sense, by all means. Like, a card is so strong, yeah, you should nerf it, definitely. It's used a lot, it's really strong, it's just great all around. They've nerfed it twice now, but it's still really popular. So it fits in great as the one spell in this deck. It allows you to take out things like, you know, goblin barrels, you know, it counters like musketeers, e-whizzes, wizards, things like that really well if you just use the bar barrel on them, and the damage from the barrel itself plus the barbarian smacking them allows you to you know, to shut them down completely. You'll notice here that my opponent pumped, and this is when I'm really going hard with the bridge spam element. I'm putting everything at the bridge, and I put the bandit, put the battle ram at the bridge, I put the musketeer behind them. I'm cycling back with the skeletons, and rather than putting down another elixir pump, I just keep putting the pressure up there. And that is what you want to do with this deck. Once you've established that elixir advantage, you really want to apply that pressure with those bridge spammy cards at the bridge. Try to go in for a massive push and catch them off guard. Now, this particular match was actually recorded in the most recent global tournament, and if I haven't already released that video, or if I'm going to release it after this, I'm going to be doing another bridge spam deck, which is the main one that I used in that global tournament. Super successful. I got a lot of wins with it, 12 and counting at the time of this recording, so we'll see how it goes. Anyway, I made the mistake of forgetting to switch back and use this deck at one point on accident, but it worked out really well. Both of these decks are, you know, really prominent in the current meta, these two bridge spam decks. So let's get back to the one at hand that we're looking at here in this particular video, and let's talk about those opening moves. Now, according to Yugi, you can actually use the bandit as an opener, like in the back, and this is something that Ash asked him, like, do you want to use it at the bridge, or do you want to use it in the back? And you know what? It's up to you, but according to Yugi, who kind of founded this deck, you'd use it in the back, because if you bandit at the bridge, it just gives them the chance to, like, tornado it into the tower right away. You know, in the back, I prefer cycling cards in the back personally, just because I feel like it gives you defensive value, you know, preemptively on the board. So whatever they're going to use offensively, you've already got something down to defend against it. Ideally, maybe it'll be in the opposite lane, but either way, if they don't put something down right away, then they're leaking Elixir. So I'd be completely fine with cycling the Bandit in the back. If you are more of an aggressive player, you could use it at the bridge. As far as other opening moves go rather, you could probably, ooh, look at that King Tower activation. You could probably cycle Skeletons in the back. And honestly, guys, this is something that you want to avoid in some decks, but in this deck, I think it's pretty safe to cycle like the Musketeer or the Hunter in the back behind the King Tower, because if they do have like the Fireball or the Poison or whatever to counter it and do some damage to your Princess Tower as well, it's not the end of the world. In fact, it's almost a good thing in this case, because then you could safely put down your Elixir Pump or your alternative range support unit. So those would be my recommendations for starting. You could always do something unconventional, you know, put an Ice Golem and cycle that in the back. That's actually not unconventional, that's pretty common. You could always do like a Battle Ram at the bridge, but I would not recommend that as an opener generally. Let's see what else. You can't open with Pump anymore, not an option, so I don't even need to say that. You could also just Barbarian Barrel at the bridge. That'll get one swing off the tower if they don't answer it. But those first few things that I mentioned, you know, cycling some of those other cards in the back would be the most ideal opening moves to me. Now let's talk about card replacements, and then I would actually like to, at the end of this video, jump into at least one loss and see how I did things wrong, and then we'll wrap it up and call it an end of this video. Alright guys, so for card replacements, for the Skeletons, you can generally replace them with like cycle cards. You know, Goblins, Spear Goblins, Bats, these are all great cards that go in pretty much that cycle role. If you prefer Ice Spirit, like me, you can totally run Ice Spirit, but I decided to stick with the exact deck that Yugi was running and run the Skeletons in this particular one. I do like Ice Spirit a little bit better than Skeletons, and Bats a little bit better than Skeletons, but it's just a matter of preference, so whatever floats your boat, really. For the Ice Golem, you could probably replace it with another mini tank, you know, do like a Knight, or even a Valkyrie. Knight just got buffed, and Valk was strong forever, but she's not as great as she was, and since Knight just got that buff, you may want to consider using the Knight. Alright guys, this is the loss that I wanted to show you, so let's see how it goes. If I recall correctly, it was really close. I almost pulled it together, but then I messed up a few places, and we'll see where those places are and see how I could have done things a little bit better. So I want to just wrap up the card replacements really quickly, and then we'll go to more of a kind of play-by-play here. So for the Battle Ram, well, let's see. For the Ice Golem, I mentioned a mini tank. For the Battle Ram, do another charge unit like the Hog or the Ram Rider would be good. If you do like a Prince or something, you could, but that's not as much of a win condition because it doesn't go directly for towers, whereas, you know, the Battle Ram does, the Hog Rider does, the Ram Rider does as well. For the Bandit, maybe a mini tank like the Knight or the Ice Golem, but again, I would go for more like a damage dealing charge unit, so maybe even like the Prince or something. You could also just do like a Royal Ghost, costs the same amount of Elixir, plays a relatively similar role. I know it's different, I know it's like splash damage and more health, or is it more health? I'm not sure. It's about the same health. But anyway, similar Elixir cost, relatively similar role, so that's an option. If you're going to replace the Hunter and Musketeer, probably another mid-range support card, something that they would use their Fireball on. So maybe even like a Wizard or an E-Wiz would be good because it only costs 4 Elixir. If you want to go a little bit cheaper, maybe Archers, that's not bad. But that doesn't give you that element of spell bait because they're rarely ever going to be using like their Fireball on your Archers. For the Pump, there isn't really a replacement. It's kind of core in this deck. So unfortunately, you can't really replace that. If you're thinking about replacing the Pump, maybe just do like a different deck. Do like the Lumberjack Bridge Spam deck or something like that. For the Barbarian Barrel, you can always just do like a Log or maybe even a Zap, just some sort of another light spell. That'll work out great. Alright guys, that is it for card replacement. So let's look at this play-by-play here. You can see that at this point I'm really trying to build up those Elixir Pumps, get that continual Elixir advantage going, just kind of get the ball rolling with that. And it's working out pretty good. I got 2 pumps down, and you'll notice I try to keep them separated. He's got the Sparky coming down here on the left, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to go hard on the right and try to apply the pressure there. I got the Ice Golem to take out the Skeleton Army, so that worked out great. And look at that Bandit countering the Sparky there, really good. That was awesome. But unfortunately, this guy does manage to break through with the Sparky eventually. And Sparky is one of those cards that's been kind of niche forever. There's not many decks that run it. The only ones that run it are like beatdown decks. Pretty much Giant or Goblin Giant Sparky are the only options. And it can be really easy to counter, and it can be a very positive Elixir trade for you to counter it, but it can also go the other way. It has the potential for massive value. It can be difficult to counter. And so I think at this point, since it's not something that I'm used to going up against a whole lot like you are with, you know, other cards, you know, like you see a Hog Rider every other game, right? Maybe not so much in this meta, but in previous metas. Sparky, a little bit less common, so I didn't counter her quite as well. You'll see I use the Battle Ram there to, you know, try to buy me some time and chip away at those minions. But the Sparky here, see, a little bit too late with the Bandit, and then I desperately place down that Hunter, and it takes it out too. Like, that's 7 Elixir right there just on that Sparky. I mean, it was just not good for me. And I almost get through here at the very end. You'll notice I actually start putting in a lot of pressure. I got the 2 pumps down. I'm getting massive Elixir. I'm leaking Elixir right there, though, which is unfortunate. And I just put in a lot of pressure at this point. I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can connect here. It gets really close, but you'll notice I only have 79 health left on my tower. All he's got to do at this point is arrows my tower, and that's pretty much it. And that's absolutely what he does. So close to getting it. So close to finishing that off and getting the victory there. But he barely was able to arrows just before I took out his tower. That is it for tonight, guys. Make sure to leave the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment or a question in the comment section below if you have any questions for me or just want to say, hey, what's cracking, Mr. Berger? Alright, guys. Thanks so much for watching, and have a good night.